Okay, let's unpack this. The world is buzzing. I mean, really buzzing with talk about AI,
Uh-huh.
especially the big questions, right? Can these things actually think like humans, learn, invent?
And crucially, what happens if they, surpass us?
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into a perspective based on this article we found that suggests that moment, the singularity. Well, it might be much closer than a lot of people assume.
And what's really interesting here, I think, is that the source material, it grounds this really complex, often kind of abstract idea
Right.
in something pretty concrete.
Which it.
Dr. Alan D. Thompson's 50-point checklist for artificial superintelligence, ASI.
Mm.
The article uses this list to actually try and track progress, measurable progress.
Okay, got it. So our mission for this deep dive then is to use this article to really understand the argument. Why do they think we're nearing this point?
Right.
We need to unpack what this checklist actually measures, look at the evidence they present, which seems pretty surprising for how fast things are moving, and just get a clearer picture of what nearing the singularity even looks like according to this specific view.
Precisely. It's about moving past the general hype, maybe the vague fears too, and looking at specific capabilities, milestones, things the source highlights as real evidence of, well, acceleration towards ASI.
All guided by Dr. Thompson's criteria.
Exactly.
All right. Let's jump into the core premise here, because the article really pushes this idea, doesn't it, that we're not just seeing small incremental AI improvements.
No, definitely not.
It argues we are actually nearing the singularity. I think it quotes Thompson suggesting maybe 94% of the way to AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, that's the number cited in the source.
Yeah.
And that we're starting to see foundational elements of the next stage, ASI, artificial superintelligence.
Okay, maybe we should quickly define those terms, at least how the source uses them.
Good idea. So AGI in this context is basically the point where AI can generate genuinely novel scientific ideas, inventions, that kind of thing.
Thinking creatively, essentially.
Right. And ASI, well, that's the step beyond, surpassing human smarts across the board. And it includes these really advanced concepts like recursive self-improvement.
That's the AI making itself smarter.
Yes, without us having to guide it every step of the way. And even tasks that sound like sci-fi, like discovering new elements for the periodic table or automating regional governance.
Wow, okay. And the way they try to quantify this rapid progress towards ASI is this big 50-point checklist.
That's the tool.
Yeah.
And it's comprehensive, like you said. It's not just about, how fast the computers are. It covers scientific breakthroughs, major tech milestones.
And societal shifts, too.
Yes, potential societal shifts are definitely on there.
Now, the article makes a really important point about the current status. It says, 0 items are fully achieved, nothing's totally checked off.
That's right. As of when the source was written, 0 items have a complete check mark. But, and this is really where the argument gains its traction, several items are marked as in progress, yellow, basically. And the source argues these in-progress items, they aren't just minor steps. They represent foundational breakthroughs, new capabilities demonstrating a fundamental shift in what AI can actually do.
So partial progress is the key thing here.
It's extremely significant, according to this perspective.
Okay, so hang on. It's not about getting 50 out of 50 yet. It's about the kind of thing showing up in that in-progress column. Why is that partial progress seen as such a big deal?
Well, that's the core insight the source is trying to get across. It argues that, unlike maybe previous AI hype cycles that focused on narrow tasks, like playing chess or Go,
Right.
these in-progress items show capabilities that are fundamental to general intelligence and potentially superintelligence.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, like demonstrating the ability to genuinely invent something new, even just one thing. That's a completely different class of achievement than just, say, processing data faster.
Okay, I see.
It suggests a capacity for creative synthesis, for real problem solving that just wasn't there before. And that fundamentally changes the potential trajectory, the source argues.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the article doesn't just talk theory. It gives concrete examples of this in-progress status, especially in science and invention.
Yes, exactly. It highlights work coming out of places like Microsoft Research.
What did they do?
Well, the source points to Microsoft's AI being used to discover a new non-PFAS coolant.
A coolant, like for refrigerators or something.
Could be industrial cooling, electronics.
Yeah.
The point is, it's a real-world material, safer for the environment, something traditional methods apparently struggled to find.
Wow. And there was more, wasn't there? Something about batteries.
Finding novel solid-state battery materials.
Yeah.
And the AI did this by sifting through, get this, 32 million potential candidates.
32 million. That's staggering.
It is. And it also mentions AI helping companies like Unilever speed up their research with incredibly rapid computational simulations.
So these aren't just lab curiosities. They're AIs contributing to tangible problems, science, industry.
Exactly. And the source connects these directly back to Thompson's checklist items.
Yeah, so.
Well, maybe it's not quite first new element added to the periodic table yet.
Right, that sounds like a huge leap.
It is. But the article frames the ability to computationally explore these vast material spaces, predict properties, find genuinely new useful substances.
Yeah.
It frames that as a foundational step towards that kind of goal.
Okay.
It fulfills partial criteria for checklist items, like first new physical invention and discovery of novel computing materials. It shows an AI capable of participating in the inventive process itself.
So AI is actually like co-inventing new materials now, helping find stuff science needed but couldn't easily find on its own.
Yes, that's how the source presents it, as compelling evidence that AI has moved beyond just analyzing what we already know, to generating genuinely novel, useful output in the physical sciences. That capacity for discovery, for synthesis, that's a hallmark of high-level intelligence.
Okay, but the article doesn't just stop there with the science stuff. There's another really powerful piece of evidence it uses for this accelerating ASI progress idea, something from Google.
Right. Alpha Evolve,
Mm.
powered by their Gemini 2.0 model, apparently.
Yeah.
And this system, well, its capability feels truly sci-fi.
Go on.
It automatically writes code, evaluates the code it writes, and then evolves it, improves it.
Evolves it. How?
The article uses this analogy, Darwinian model. It takes human prompts, okay, but then it generates lots of different code variations to try and fulfill the prompt. And then it uses evolutionary selection criteria, survival of the fittest code, basically to improve the programs over time.
Without constant human hand-holding on how to improve it.
That's the key. Less direct human guidance on the improvement process itself.
Darwin meets coding. I like that. It's literally refining its own like functional genetic code. That's kind of wild. What has it actually done? What improvements has it made?
The source lists some pretty significant achievements. It apparently improved Google's own internal data center efficiency by 7%. Globally.
7% globally. That's huge for a company like Google.
Massive operational impact, yeah. It also optimized the very training pipelines they use to build future AI models. So it's making AI development itself more efficient.
Okay, that sounds recursive.
It is. And it improved hardware designs, too, specifically for their tensor processing units, their TPUs, those specialized AI chips.
Right.
And maybe most remarkably, the source says it improved algorithms that were thought to be basically perfect, optimized for 60 years.
Wait, hang on. It improved algorithms that humans hadn't been able to optimize further for 6 decades.
That's what the source claims.
That's profound. So how does this capability, this recursive self-improvement thing, fit into the bigger ASI picture?
Well, if you connect it back, recursive self-improvement is often considered, one of the defining characteristics of true ASI, maybe even a necessary one. Because an intelligence that can understand its own workings and then improve its own code or its own design or architecture without needing human researchers to figure out the next step, that just fundamentally changes the speed and the scale of future progress. It can become exponential.
Right.
So Alpha Evolve, optimizing its own tools, its own algorithms, even the hardware it runs on, the source presents that as a practical, demonstrable step towards that really critical recursive capability.
Okay. So beyond the pure tech achievements, the article also highlights that this progress towards AGI, towards ASI, it's not just happening in labs, it's already sparking these intense discussions about major societal shifts, even philosophical ones.
Yes, and these are reflected in the checklist too.
Like what?
Well, it touches on some really striking comments and ideas that are apparently circulating among people right at the forefront of AI development.
This is.
The source quotes Ilias Sutskever. He's chief scientist at OpenAI, saying something like, "We're definitely going to build a bunker before we release AGI."
A bunker. Wow. What does the source make of that?
The article interprets that kind of comment as reflecting both things at once. The potential perceived danger of AGI, but also the immense perceived value or power that people associate with it. Enough power to maybe warrant a bunker.
Wow, the bunker comment. And the source also brings up this idea some people call the AI rapture. That sounds intense.
It does.
It sounds like some people see this not just as another tech upgrade, but as something, well, bigger, almost existential.
Yeah, and this raises an important point. The source highlights that the perceived implications of AGI, at least among some individuals really deep in the field, they span this incredibly wide spectrum.
From existential risk needing bunkers.
Right. To something almost spiritual for a
Right.
few. The AI rapture idea, as the source presents it, it's this viewpoint held by some that AGI arriving could trigger this super rapid, maybe unequal transformation, potentially leaving some people behind.
Is the source endorsing that?
No, it's very clearly just reporting these perspectives as part of the landscape around AI development. Not saying they're fact, just that these ideas exist and are being discussed.
Okay. And then moving from those kind of intense philosophical ideas to something really concrete, like actual AI governance. That feels like a huge leap for society, maybe a sudden one.
It does feel like a massive step.
But the article points to a real-world example already happening.
It does. The source mentions efforts in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, as a place that's apparently moving towards AI-led governance.
What does that mean exactly, AI making laws?
Well, it describes AI systems being used there not just for, basic admin tasks, but actually for helping revise existing legislation, or even helping to write new legislation.
Really?
Yeah. And the article connects this directly to a specific checklist item. First region country primarily governed by AI.
So it's not full AI government yet.
Definitely not. But the source presents it as a tangible step, something already being explored, that points towards those really transformative societal items on the checklist.
Okay. And speaking of transformative, the checklist also includes some really visionary future milestones, right? And things that sound like pure science fiction today.
Oh, yeah. Things like millions or even billions of fully autonomous humanoids becoming common.
Yeah.
In workplaces, maybe even in homes.
Like robots everywhere.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Or the possibility of fully autonomous vehicles becoming so safe, so ubiquitous, that humans might eventually be, banned from driving their own cars for safety reasons.
Humans banned from driving.
Wow.
Checklist items also include things like terraforming or optimizing other planets.
Okay, now we're really in sci-fi territory.
Definitely feels like it. And another one is patent offices just being completely flooded, overwhelmed by the sheer number of inventions generated solely by AIs.
So, to try and show that these aren't just random, disconnected ideas, but maybe follow a discernible path, the article gives some historical context. It talks about Google's alpha systems.
Right. It traces that lineage, starting with AlphaGo, the one that mastered Go by studying the human games. Then moving to AlphaGo Zero, which learned totally from scratch, just playing itself, and ended up surpassing the original AlphaGo.
And then came other systems, like alpha geometry for proving theorems in geometry, alpha proof for broader theorem proving.
And Alpha Evolve, which we already talked about.
And finally, alpha evolve, exactly, with its self-improvement capabilities.
So if you look back at how those alpha systems developed step by step, it reveals a pretty clear path, doesn't it, towards more general purpose AI, more adaptive AI.
That's the argument the source makes, that this progression shows development towards capabilities that are key pillars for AGI and ultimately ASI. It wasn't just one sudden jump out of nowhere.
Right.
And the source uses this history, along with that checklist, which it describes kind of like a moon landing scorecard.
I like that metaphor.
Yeah, it's useful. Even if you haven't landed on the moon yet, achieving the early stages, getting into orbit, doing the trajectory correction burns it shows you're demonstrably on the path. So those in-progress items on the ASI checklist, especially when you see them through the history of systems like Alpha Evolve getting more capable, the source presents that as strong evidence that we're on a measurable trajectory towards those much bigger transformative goals.
And crucially, that we're moving along that trajectory with accelerating speed.
That acceleration is a key part of the argument, yes.
Okay, so pulling all of this together, this deep dive into Dr. Thompson's checklist, the examples in the article, what does it all really mean for us? For you, listening right now? Why does this matter beyond the research labs and the tech companies?
Well, I think it means understanding that the technological horizon, to borrow the source's metaphor again, it might be approaching much more rapidly than we thought. And the potential impacts aren't just confined to, niche technical fields. The kinds of capabilities we've been talking about, AI helping with real scientific invention, AI optimizing its own complex infrastructure, even these early steps towards influencing governance.
These aren't just theoretical anymore.
Exactly. They're being demonstrated. They're starting to appear, even if just partially, in the real world. And that suggests these fundamental shifts could affect your life, our lives, sooner and maybe more broadly than we might expect.
The speed factor again?
The speed highlighted in the source is really the critical takeaway, I think.
And the article, it does try to link this perspective to other significant voices in the field too, doesn't it? It references people like Karen Howe, Max Tegmark, Dario Amodei, citing them from within the source material itself.
Yes, it does that to show that this view on accelerating progress and transformative potential, well, it isn't totally isolated. It's part of a larger conversation.
How so?
For example, the source connects predictions from someone like Max Tegmark about AI triggering big economic and tech booms to the kind of rapid breakthroughs it's discussing.
Okay.
And it mentions Dario Amodei's discussions around AI's potential impact on complex human challenges, like mental health, which also relates back to potential future items on that ASI checklist.
It really does feel like we're watching elements of science fiction just becoming reality, and maybe at a pace that's frankly a bit hard to fully get your head around.
The source certainly makes that argument very forcefully. It uses the structure of that checklist to try and map the trajectory, and it really emphasizes the recent, tangible AI achievements as evidence of that acceleration.
So summing up, this exploration of Dr. Alan D. Thompson's ASI checklist and the examples cited in the article we looked at, it really paints this picture of incredibly rapid foundational progress in AI. It suggests that milestones we might have thought were decades away are already showing partial achievement, which indicates, according to this source, a strong accelerating trajectory towards AGI and maybe ASI sooner than many anticipate.
Carrying all the transformative potential.
And also the risks that the source touches on, like that bunker comment.
Right. The central message from the source really seems to be that while the finish line, 0 items fully checked off, is still ahead. It's the speed and the nature of those in-progress items that are the key indicators. They suggest the journey is well underway and maybe moving faster than we expected.
Which leaves us with a pretty big thought, doesn't it? If AI is already, according to this source, contributing to writing new laws in some places and improving algorithms that humans thought were perfect, what aspects of our decision-making, our creativity, our daily lives, what might be next on this path towards significant automation or maybe even forms of AI-led organization? And, how prepared are we really for that kind of future?